So long, Zavok. See, you and your cronies never, because Sega's never bringing you back. Oh, Chaos. I did not see that coming. Wait, Chaos? Hey guys, it's the Lyoko Gem, and I'm going to talk about Zavok, his inclusion in Sonic Forces, and what that could mean for both the past and future of Sonic. First, let's look at the big bad himself, Zavok. Zavok is a Zeddy from an area known as the Lost Hex, which I guess still exists because he's here. The Zeddy are a race of monster-type bad guys that have the ability to control machines. The only ones we know of are the Deadly Six, consisting of Zazz, Zaman, Zik, Zor, Xena, and finally, the man himself, Zavok. The villains were incredibly powerful and managed to give Sonic a run for his money, taking out his friends one by one and nearly destroying the world itself. And while they were pretty one-dimensional themselves, when we look at Zavok, they at least had something going on for him. His character showed that he had a great lust for power and overall destruction. He showed strong leadership skills over the rest of the Zeddy to the point that his master Zik chose him to lead them over the rest of them. Not only that, but he showed an interesting relationship with Sonic, constantly taunting him with the horror of everything going on around him, getting Sonic visibly angry in some instances, something few characters have been able to do. With the scenario even greater here in Forces, Zavok is going to be seriously wrecking some havoc. With the history being explained, I think it's safe to say that it was a pretty big shock to everyone when he returned. Lost World got some pretty low scores, and it seemed to us that Sega was basically ignoring it with Forces. Not only that, but from a narrative perspective, Lost World literally made no sense to anyone. We went from Generations, which seemed to have at least confirmed that, yes, there is some form of continuity in the Sonic games, and it seems to have this set, established world that melds the classic and modern styles. It was a celebration, and because of that, the next game moving forward should have been in this established world. But then we suddenly have the Lost Hex, leaving everyone absolutely confused as it was never really explained why it's there. Just that it's a thing, and there are these guys called the Zeddy, and Eggman has the magic conch shell from SpongeBob for some reason. We were all just supposed to accept that, and amongst all of Lost World's problems, the connection to the stories of previous games just felt really polarizing, off-putting, and confusing. But after seeing the Villains trailer for Sonic Forces, I think I understand why it exists. You see everyone, Lost World had one mission, and one mission only, that is super important to Sonic Forces, and possibly the rest of the Sonic canon as well. Lost World was a thing to introduce the Deadly Six, and while I don't think they're going to be super important, or have like record-breaking plot twists that'll shock everyone and make us think that Zavok and the rest of the Zeddy are the most important thing in the Sonic canon, I do think that Zavok's and the rest of the Deadly Six's presence would be important to this game, as it's very clear that this story is actually trying to do things. And I don't think Zavok would be brought back for any real reason, because do fans honestly care about him or any of the Zeddy? No. He's here for a reason. With Lost World having the goal of introducing the Deadly Six, it's possible that they have a chance to appear in the rest of the games moving forward. It's possible that the Deadly Six could end up becoming recurring villains in games to come. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, we'll have to wait and see. With the talk of the rest of the Deadly Six, I raise the question, do I think the rest of the Deadly Six will return in Sonic Forces? No, probably not. The reason I say this is because we've already got a huge set of villains in the game outside of Zavok. We have Eggman, Shadow, Metal Sonic, Chaos, and the new guy, Infinite. To add 5 more villains in there would be kinda nuts, and a ballsy move on Sega and the writers of the game, as it might feel too cluttered if we have 11 villains in there. And while I'm aware the Deadly Six could technically function as one villain, still. However, I do think that there is one Zeddy that poses a chance of return, if any of them at all, and that is Zazz. Think about it. When it came to advertising for Lost World, the Zeddy that was used the most out of them was Zazz, and he was all over the place in 2012 to 2014. He was in Sonic Dash, Runners, and another game I'll use to cement my point in a little bit. Zazz was the member of the Deadly Six aside from Zavok himself, and posed a rather interesting, taunty relationship with Sonic, but in a different way than Zavok. Sonic didn't take Zazz seriously, and Zazz would react to that. Plus, aside from Zavok himself, he seemed to have the most personality out of any of the Deadly Six, with a manic, monsterish sort of deal. And I think the biggest thing of all that points towards this is Mario and Sonic at the Rio 2016 Olympic Games. Yes, it's just a simple spin-off, sure, but think about it. Zavok was in the game, and you know the only other Zeddy to appear in the game alongside him? That's right, Zazz. And look at it this way, that game came out nearly 3 years after Lost World. There's no reason they would have to put Zazz and Zavok in an otherwise forgettable game because they didn't need to advertise them anymore. Most of the sales they could have gotten out of Lost World were long gone at that point. But 2016 was only last year, and here we have Zavok back at it again. So, to say Zazz might return because of this, I think is entirely possible. Plus, if we look at Zazz's character, in a situation like this, with mindless destruction, he'd be super into it. He'd be joining in on the fray and making sure he gets the respect he feels he deserves from Sonic to make him fall. As for what I expect from Zavok in this story, I expect him to be fleshed out in a way that he never was before in Lost World. To be the thought-provoking villain he was truly meant to be, and have and try and make him the dark and intimidating villain they tried to make him in Lost World. So I think that Zavok truly will be wreaking havoc in this one. And there's where I'm going to admit my personal opinions on Zavok being in the game. I don't hate that he's here. I think it's incredibly interesting. As a person who really enjoys stories in Sonic games, I'm super curious as to what exactly they're going to do with Zavok, because I actually believe he has the capability to be a good villain. But what do you all think? Do you think I'm right about Lost World's sole purpose to introduce the Deadly Six, or that Zazz will be coming to forces? How do you feel about Zavok in the game? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure to like and subscribe. With all of that being said, this has been the Lyoko Gem, a warping out.